I want to introduce you to somebody, a friend of the program, Tracy Levinson. And I don't even remember where we were, Tracy, but we met each other and started having a conversation. I think we were at dinner someplace and having a conversation. Didn't know you were an author, didn't know you were an atheist a long time ago.
Right.
And we started having a conversation about how both of us, in many ways, were carrying around a lot of baggage and self-hatred for a long time. And how our lives changed when we got rid of all of that stuff. You were an atheist, and so you were not agnostic, you were actually against God.
I was so against God that I would run into people that were people of faith, and I would try to talk them out of their faith.
Why were you like that? What had happened to you?
Well, I grew up in a culture that was like that. That was the culture that I grew up in. And I always felt I was...
California?
Beaumont, Texas.
Really?
Yeah.
Wow.
And I remember, actually, I thought about this last Sunday. I saw a UPS truck come by, and I thought, oh, when I was a little girl, everybody was at church. And I always wondered what was wrong with my family, that we didn't do that. Because some reason I thought knowing God had to do with the building. But eventually I came to a place where I did find faith in God. But I think all those years when I would try to talk people out of their faith, I think it was because I felt so insecure that I had no anchor.
I will tell you, I think that's driving society a lot, especially in this election. People aren't sure. They're not sure. And so they want to either convince somebody who believes the opposite to make them feel better, or they want to take somebody down because they're making them feel bad about their choice, because they're not, and I don't mean the diehards on either side.
Right.
I mean the average person. They don't know what to do. And so they're kind of like you, where you were trying to take them down to make yourself feel better.
Because I had no internal navigation system.
Right. So that's kind of what your book is about. And your book is unashamed. And it reaches right to millennials. And we did a show on the network with Lawrence and you brought in, it was a very frank show. You brought in millennial girls who had all had sex and because of the God part of their life, felt ashamed about it. How did that go?
Well, it was interesting because we actually invited boys to come too, who kind of had the same experience in this culture. What I find is that there's two camps. There's the Christian, or, it could be any religion.
Yeah, religious camp.
Sexuality is not seen as this gift from God when it's distorted. And so they have so much shame about even the fact that they have a sexuality. And those same kids, a lot of times when they get married, have a hard time embracing what is good and what God has set up to be good, because they've associated having a sex drive as being something that's evil or bad. But then, there's the crazy part of the culture with social media where kids are hooking up and meeting each other, and they're just throwing their bodies and being careless and foolish. You talk about politics so much and how disregarding we are about, how many people are being killed right now, and it's there's this disregard for human life. And I think for a young girl to throw her body to a guy, 50% of young people who are having sex, 50% will get a sexual disease. And talk about being frank, I had one in college. I'm a statistic. I'm one of those statistics where it's dangerous. So I wrote this book because I really care about these kids, and I care about these parents trying to navigate this culture where so many kids don't really have that internal navigation system.
That's a problem. The churches have become so weak because in many of them, they are stuck in a place to where, for instance, sex is a gift from God.
Right.
If it's the way we procreate, and he's the one. It wasn't like a mistake that it feels so good.
Right.
And he's like, oh, crap, I didn't mean it to feel good.
Right.
It is a gift. But so many philosophies will make that shameful.
Right.
When, as you said, it is the misuse of it. And so it doesn't compute. And so there's no way to bridge the old and the culture has so rotted that there's no place in between, and that's not a good place to be.
Right, and that's why, you came into a place where you wanted to know God. I came to a place where I wanted to know God, and I love that God is love. And one of the things that I try to encourage parents to teach their kids, but I also talk to millennials about, is that, like in the Greek language, there's different types of love. There's agape love, which is in the best interest. So the best interest for my daughter who's in college is not for her to throw her body around sexually outside of being in covenant. But if a guy comes up to her and he starts making out with her and he tells her he loves her, I want her to know that there's eros love. And eros love is erotic love. And I want her to think eros love is amazing and go for it in your marriage. But it's not safe. And the Bible says that love protects. And I want your daughter and I want my daughter to be protected. And so my hope is to encourage parents and to get the message out there that you don't not have sex outside of marriage because it makes you unpure or bad. I mean, God, the whole reason we have our faith is because that God makes us good, and God,
God can wash it clean.
Right, it comes from God, but I want them to know that God loves them so much, and so I would encourage them to not do those certain behaviors, because I would want them to internally know that they are so loved and so precious that they would want to put that in a place where that would be safe for them, because I wasn't safe. I mean, the things that I did, it's like, I wish that someone had helped me. Like, I wish somebody had cared about me enough to, like, speak into my life and try to help me navigate my sexuality.
Is this a special on the Blaze Network? Do you know where it's kept? Have you seen? Because I have not seen it. I've seen pieces, and we've talked about it in the building a lot because everybody was like, wow, was that a frank conversation? And that's good. Everybody's glad. But more people need to see this, and more people need to read this, because we are frank in our household. I'm frank with my son. My son, has been on the internet and seen some things that were horrifying to him. Horrifying. I mean, it's not like it used to be when we were growing up. And you can get into snuff films before you even know it. And it's just twisting our children and tying them up in knots, and they don't know what to do.
It reminds me of what's going on politically, of our borders and things coming in, getting closer and closer, and I feel like the internet has done that. My son struggled for a season with porn, and he wanted me to talk about it in the book. And
so your kids helped you write this? How old are your kids? They're in college.
They're in college.
Yeah, okay.
Oh, it's actually real questions from real millennials. I have interviewed young men. Like, there's a lot of, because we wrestle, what we're doing is we're wrestling through all these questions that they're having. But like, with your son, like if he's searching 1 in 5 mobile searches.
He's not
he's not doing it now.
Yeah, but he will.
1 in 5 is for porn. So like, what would keep someone from not doing that? Because there's a rule. Rules either lead to rebellion or depression.
Correct.
Well, this comes to a lot of times we talk about how the government is involved in things, and there is certainly a place for government in many aspects of our life. The Constitution outlines it pretty well. But the idea that you're going to be able to control things like this with legislation and rules it never seems to be true. You have to win those people by their hearts and their minds and their spirits. Right? That's the only way you're going to be able to control that when you're in your apartment by yourself and you've got Jeffy's websites up.
You want kids to not know the rules that, oh, my dad used to always say this, because you want them, if you can. Sometimes they don't have the maturity and you just have to have the rule. But you want them to understand why the rule is there and know that it is based in love, and really understand it at their level, that it may be appropriate later, it may not be appropriate, may be appropriate here, but not here, and why. Otherwise, they just rebel. That's what I did.
Or they're depressed.
Yeah.
And suppressed and depressed.
Yes. And then when they make a mistake, they can go very, very dark, or they can, I heard a stat on girls cutting themselves that is remarkable. How many girls? I have a friend of mine who's millennial, and he said, most of the girls I have dated will bring up that at some point they were or they are cutting themselves. I'm like, that is crazy.
That is pain.
One last question. What was the turning point for you?
In my faith,
Yeah.
I was holding my daughter, and she was a baby, and I literally looked down at her and I thought, there must be a greater love. I felt like there was a greater love that I didn't have access to. And so I kind of didn't drop my daughter, but I threw my hands in the air in my heart and was like, okay, God, if you're real, will you please show me? And then just a series of events, all I did was ask, and all these cool things happened. And
Now
then,
you're a teacher at a church.
and now I'm a teacher, and I mentor girls.
That's amazing. Okay, the name of the book is Unashamed. It's available online or anywhere books are sold. Candid conversation about dating, love, nakedness, and faith. If you have girls, you have boys, you have kids, I highly recommend, especially, we didn't learn this stuff. That we didn't have the frank conversations, at least in my house, that you need to have with your kids now. Unashamed by Tracy Levinson and friends, and it's available everywhere.
Before you go, do you cover in the book, is it true that the only real way to make sure young kids, teenagers especially, stay away from sex is Jeffy?
Yes.
Show them.
That's in the book?
Yes.
In the book. Wow.
Absolutely.
Okay. Good.
Hey, I'm here to help.
You just show them a picture. Kids, you might find pictures of this guy naked
Set them
online.
free.
Kids cancel the internet. Turn their phones in. It's crazy.
A lot of Amish communities suddenly popping up everywhere.
Amazing.